Hello, good evening, everybody. The candidates, the San Anselmo residents, welcome to our 2020 Town Council election debate, hosted as in the previous years by the Chamber of Commerce of San Anselmo and the President, Benedetto Cico. Good evening. I'd like to recognize first the all-volunteer board members of our chamber, Vance Frost of Vanguard Properties, Assad Aware of US Bank, Chris Kelson, State Farm, Jennifer Grenier-Selvig from Marine Sanitary Service, our ambassadors, Denise Montalvo and Lawrence Frines, and last and not definitely least, Pat from Creekside Pizza and Tap Room. I'd like also to recognize the great work by Trevor Henley, producing tonight's debate from Desire to Inspire Studios. He has been very generous with the chamber meeting our limited budget. We have again, thank you, Mr. Spotswood from the Marine IJ as our moderator tonight. Many questions will be asked by the public, so I just limit a brief comment of behalf on the chamber and our members about what are our most pressing issues as business in town, hoping that the candidates, once elected and be on the town council, will keep them in mind in their decisions. Such issues are even more important nowadays with the COVID-19 situation. So regulations and permit applications to make it easy and fast and possibly inexpensive. Flood control, a lot of stuff is going on. We finally get some traction, so that's great. Traffic, parking, public safety, education in general, and education and retention of the workforce is a big issue now. And now the most important issue to continue to support, actually, a safe and fast reopening. And on this matter, I'd like to thank our town manager, David Donner, and his staff over the last several months. They've been extremely helpful and supportive of all of us to make this happen. So thank you to all of them. So now, without any further delay, I will introduce the candidates. I'm going to do that in alphabetical order. Eileen Burke, candidate and attorney. Vice Mayor Brian Colbert. Alexis Fineman, a council member and a teacher, and Politzer, a candidate and a writer, a parent, Councilmember John Wright, and good luck to all of them. Thank you, all of you candidates, for running for office, to dedicate yourself to public service. It's definitely another great day to be in San Anselmo, and now, Mr. Spotswood, you got the show for you. Thank you, good night.
Thank you, Benedetto. Well, welcome everybody to the first and hopefully last Zoom type San Anselmo Town Council debate. We thank you for your patience. It's good to be back for a second time. This time we have learned how to do debates properly, and we learned this week watching the national scene that we have a bunch of fine people in San Anselmo that follow the rules. So we thank you very much for that. The rules you need to know are as follows, and the public needs to know this as well. We are going to start. Each candidate for the town council will have 2 minutes to explain basically their platform. It will go in alphabetical order. Thereafter, we will be doing rotations, so it's fair and everybody has a chance to go first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. We will then do questions and answers. I just want to thank you in advance for the folks that have submitted questions on YouTube or Facebook, and we're going to try to answer some of them. We only have time for 8 or 9 questions to the candidates. The quicker you answer the questions, even if it takes less than a minute, means we have more time for questions. And then and some questions, by the way, I'm going to come up with the rules where I can come up with a few questions and they'll be thrown in immediately. You don't have to worry, folks, that I'm not mentioning your name. We're not mentioning the name of anybody who wrote a question. So you're anonymous, but keep your questions short. I'm going to try to put together similar questions into one to save time and make sure your points are covered. After the 1 minute Q&A, candidates, then we're going to have a 2-minute wrap up for each of you, starting in reverse order. And I've just told you the order, you know what it is. You'll have 2 minutes to tell the good folks at San Anselmo why they should vote for you. Voting starts very shortly, and so it's very relevant. Those are the ground rules. I know you will respect them. And I ask the folks at home to write their questions when they do briefly, so we have time for more questions. So let's keep going. This is the product. This is the fun part of democracy, where everybody gets to see what those folks are really like. And we're going to start to find out what Eileen Burke is like, because alphabetically, she's first.
Okay. Hi, I'm Eileen Burke. I was born and raised in San Anselmo. I'm running because I want to get back to the town I've lived in for over 50 years. But whether you've lived here for 50 years or just moved here 5 weeks ago, we all live here for the same reasons. It's safe, we've got great schools, it's not overcrowded, our neighborhoods have character, and we can walk or bike to town shops and restaurants, plus we have natural beauty and recreation. I love this town, and I'll work to keep our town the same place that brought you here and better. Some of my priorities, I'll make sure we're as fire and flood prepared as we can be. Our downtown needs some help. We can make it look better in easy ways, like stringing lights across it, like we have on 4th Street. And let's get back to events like music, wine, and art walks. Our parks need to be restored and maintained. Memorial is a priority of mine, but Creek Park also, and where we'll have something we want and can afford. I am not afraid to tackle our unsustainable pensions that threaten all of our other services if we don't get them under control. Personally, I'm married and I have 16-year-old boy-girl twins who went through Wade Thomas, White Hill, and are now juniors at Drake High School. I've volunteered in almost every capacity at school, sports, and town events. Homeroom parent at Wade Thomas, boys and girls basketball coach at St. Anselmo and White Hill, helping build the dinosaur park back in 2000. Creek cleanup, serving on the board of the Ross Valley Breakers Soccer Club, and currently I'm on the age-friendly San Anselmo Task Force, where I'm giving out free masks to fight COVID and leading community building on Tamalpais Avenue. Professionally, I'm a criminal defense trial attorney, and I've spent the past 25 years defending our constitutional rights on a daily basis. I'm good on my feet, I know how to advocate, and I know how to reach consensus, all skills necessary on the council. I'm endorsed by our Mayor Ford Green and former mayors Matt Brown, Jeff Crute, John Colteau, Paul Chignell, and literally thousands of residents from several generations. I think I can represent the broadest group of residents. I'd like to work for you, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Our next candidate going is Brian Colbert. Brian.
My name is Brian Colbert. I'm the Vice Mayor of San Anselmo and an entrepreneur. I live in our beautiful town with my wife and my 10-year-old daughter who attends Wade Thomas Elementary School. I'd like to talk about 3 things during these 2 minutes. First, I spearheaded Reimagine Creek Park, an innovative and fiscally responsible project to create a brand new park in our historic town. 3 years ago, I ran on the vision that economic vitality was intertwined with flood mitigation, and that the creation of a necklace of open space would serve as a catalyst for community building and economic rebirth. Reimagine Creek Park embodies all the values that are important to San Anselmo. I brought together a volunteer group of residents to help shape and execute the project. The park creates a compelling family and community experience. It's a tangible commitment to equity, it's open space, and it bends the climate curve by encouraging people to walk and bike downtown. Secondly, I think one of the most important things that can be asked of any candidate is, what have you done from a policy perspective to help our community during COVID? I mean, sure, we've all done our part. I gave 100 masks to the Mass Tree last week. But last April, I wrote a piece in the Marin IJ about the cash crunch our businesses would be facing. And since then, I've really stepped up. I've been on 2 county-level committees, Marin Recovers and the Marin Economic Recovery Task Force, to help people, to help us address public health concerns, the reopening challenges, and how to build a sustainable, green, and climate-friendly economic recovery. Thirdly, I want to talk about endorsements. If you go to my website, Colbert for Council, you see I've got over 60 endorsements. They're your friends and neighbors, the people you know who make this community special. I also have built relationships I'm endorsed by Jared Huffman, Mark Lee, Mark McGuire, and also Katie Wright. Thank you.
Brian. The next is Alexis. Alexis, please.
All right. Hi, I'm Alexis, and I'm running for San Anselmo Town Council because I care deeply about the place that I call home. As a lifelong Ross Valley resident, a teacher, and the youngest council member in Marin County, I represent our generation's commitment to a safe and resilient future. I'm asking for your vote so that I can continue to serve on the council and work hard to represent our community. Prior to joining the council, I participated in many council meetings as a member of the public. I strive now to be the council member I wished for then: thoughtful, thorough, community-minded, strategic. I bring a fresh, open-minded perspective and an eye for nuance. As a teacher, I know how to do my homework, and I'm not afraid to hit pause, ask what if, or take a tough stance when necessary. I am proud to have received every professional and organizational endorsement I've sought to date. I'm the only candidate in this race endorsed by the Sierra Club, and I'm the only candidate endorsed by the Marin Women's PAC. I'm also endorsed by the Marin County Democratic Party, the California Democratic Party, Marin Professional Firefighters, our local Ross Valley firefighters, the North Bay Labor Council, Marin County Young Democrats, and our Sunrise Marin Youth Hub. My candidacy is supported by our supervisor, Katie Rice, Mayor Ford Green, and my fellow council member, Steve Berto. I believe our community is stronger and our town functions better when we bring everyone to the table. In my time on council, I've worked collaboratively with other council members and staff, connected with different stakeholders, brought new voices and perspectives to town hall, and done my best to make sure that everyone is welcomed and included along the way. As a teacher and a young person, my dedication to the future of this town and to younger generations is absolute. It's why addressing climate change is so important to me. I work closely with our Sustainability Commission, town staff, and council members from all over the county to help further our climate commitments. I walk my talk. I didn't want to order plastic campaign signs that would end up in the landfill. Instead, local artists volunteered to design and handprint signs onto scrap cardboard, meaning my signs are the only ones in this of the candidates that can be recycled. We are in uncertain times, and whatever comes before us, I promise to center my values: good stewardship of all our resources, long-term vision and planning, and bringing everyone to the table. Thank you. I'd be honored to have your vote.
Alexis, and let's ask Ann to come next.
Sir, and I'm running for San Anselmo Town Council because I love San Anselmo. I've lived here for 22 years with my kids and my husband, Marty Rosenberg, in a shingle house on Brookside Drive. I'm a Cal graduate with a background in print and television. But while raising my kids here, I morphed into a serial volunteer. I was a repeat Brookside room parent, a drag volunteer, a Saba mom, a Girl Scout leader. I developed a yes-backed multicultural mythology program at Whitehill. I've phone banked for school bonds. I've knocked doors on local elections. I've marched, I've donated, I've walked swing districts to flip congressional seats, and I did it all, and I did it effectively. While I was walking precincts here, I asked people, what do you want from your town government? The people were very clear. San Anselmans want their town government to listen to them, and they want their voices to be heard. And this is what I do. I engage with the public, I listen, and I act effectively on their behalf. A couple of weeks ago, there was a town proposal up for the vote that would turn half of downtown San Anselmo Avenue into a one-way street, sending traffic through neighborhoods and side streets. Many residents and merchants didn't even know about the proposal, and when they found out, they were overwhelmingly against it. So I went down the avenue, and in conjunction with Eileen, I talked to most every merchant and restaurant owner, and I listened to their input and concerns. We organized with the residents, and together we acted in the best interest of the community, and we helped forestall the vote till spring. And this is what I will do for you. I will advocate for you as your council person. I will work with our business community to support thriving commerce and a vital downtown, and I will strive to attract minority-owned businesses to San Anselmo. I'm on an informal committee that is right now working to fix Memorial Park and Millennium Playground with affordable funds that we have at our availability with the town. I will promote disaster preparedness and fire-safe neighborhoods. I will rebuild the San Anselmo Volunteer Network, and I will work to preserve open space. San Anselmans want their voices to be heard by our town government, and they want their needs and community concerns to drive town projects and policy. And they want sensible leadership that keeps our town safe and resilient. I will provide that leadership, and I would be honored to have your vote. I'm endorsed by our current mayor.
Thanks, Ann. We are going to keep to the timing here. And thank you very, very much. John, you would be our last person to give us their platform.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Dick. Thank you, everybody. I'm John Wright, running for town council for a third term. My wife and I and our children moved to San Anselmo 30 years ago. I immediately started off on a long career of community service, starting with Cub Scouts. I spent 17 years on the Ross Valley and Tam High School District boards. I was chair of the RVCS, which was the predecessor to the Yes Foundation, helped start the Drake Fund. And then in 2013, I decided my kids were long gone from school, but I decided I wanted to continue to help the community, and I came on the town council at that time. So I'm running on a platform currently of three things, basically. One is public safety. I think that's an incredibly important top of mind issue for people. All the fire issues, flood control. We have a lot of public safety issues. Family and age friendly and keeping a vibrant community. I've got a long track record of support for parks. The Red Hill Community Park was my big project for 15 years. I'm also very committed to sustainable economic recovery. I've been a member of the Economic Development Committee for 7 years now. We've accomplished quite a lot on that committee, including signage, the medians. We've done a lot of work to help the small businesses succeed, and I'm quite committed to continuing that. So I'm hoping to get your support for another 4 years. Thank you, Dick.
Thank you, John. We're now going to go into the question and answers, and we're going to do the rotations. Just so everybody knows, the first answeree is Brian Colbert. Then it's going to be Alexis Fineman, Ann Politzer, John Wright, and Eileen Burke. And then everyone will bump over one at a time after that. So, Brian, be aware that you're going to be the first person to answer the question from our citizens. What stakes, and this is the same for everybody, what stakes might be taken to make the town more welcoming to people of color or those from a more diverse background?
Well, we just talked about it at council, and I think it's twofold. I think one is that we continue to do the things that make this town attractive to everyone, right? And I think, for instance, creating a brand new park downtown that encourages people to walk. We continue to focus on, safety. We focus on the things that make it attractive to everyone. And then I think actually it's really a question that we can all personally ask ourselves. What are we doing to make our town, ourselves, inclusive? I mean, people like to talk about, San Anselmo's the whitest community. That's just numbers on a spreadsheet. And my definition of inclusivity is a story that I shared at the recent town council meeting. And that's that John Wright, who happens to be white, invited my wife and my daughter over to his house to dine with his family and meet his friends. To me, that's real inclusivity. Two people who've come to San Anselmo and are enjoying it for what it is, those special things, the parks, the community gatherings, the pedestrian safety, the walking, and of course the fine weather and the schools.
Thank you, Brian. Everybody should know that when Brian made his opening statement, there was microphone problems and it was difficult to hear. There was a little buzz. So Brian, when we get to the end, we're going to give you a little extra time to recoup that, because that's not fair. It's only fair that we give you a little extra time. We'll do that before we do the wrap-up. So I just want you to know, and I want the other candidates to know, because we noted that microphone difficulty, which has now been resolved. Alexis, same question.
Yes, thank you. So as Brian mentioned, we did just talk about this at a council meeting, and one of the steps that we've taken is to form an ad hoc task force that will basically be auditing our town's policies. I think this is a good first step. They'll be auditing the policies basically to assess, them with kind of a lens towards racial justice and equity. I think it's a good first step, but there has been a lot of community interest and community call for a broader type of committee or commission. There was a petition going around with a couple hundred signatures, I believe. And I support the creation of a standing committee that would focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and actually kind of report back to the council to prescribe specific actions, set goals, determine strategies, et cetera. The reason I think this is important is because I think that we need to be really proactive in giving people in our town who have not felt welcomed for whatever reason into town business to be given a space to basically organize and self-identify the priorities and the steps that they think that we should be taking as a town, rather than us as a council prescribing those steps outwards to a committee. So I support a standing committee on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Now, Ann Politzer.
An action as far as this goes. And I think what we need to do is introduce a presence in our business community that's more visible of minority business owners. We have a lot in the ethnic food restaurant business. But I think if we could reach out to, more communities of color with grants, we would be successful in drawing people to San Anselmo. We can certainly use some more businesses downtown right now because there's 8 empty storefronts. There's a woman named Shannon Mahoney who runs an organization called Allies of the Black Community, and she actively seeks grants for Black-owned businesses. I've been talking to her. She might be a wonderful person to join up on this diversity committee that Alexis was talking about. I think we need to bring visibility and normalcy to San Anselmo when it comes to people of color, which would mean minority businesses downtown. It would mean ideally at some point, and this is another issue, but a visible police presence in San Anselmo, perhaps with a minority police officer. I know that we are not in charge of that, but we can certainly put some, interest in that area. And also we're not in charge of school hiring, but to have more teachers of color in the local school district would be wonderful. And in line with that, if we could work with the school district to develop programs where kids from our districts meet up with kids from San Rafael, Marin City, and work in sort of WPA type projects where they're on neutral, equal turf and working as peers, that would really help. Because what we need to do is dispense with this idea of race, because there is no such thing as race, but you don't want to see people as other, which is what seems to happen in these situations. The Racial Equity Committee is a great idea. A lot of it is to do with, training and anti-bias, language revision in town, and protocols, but I want to see something actually happening on the street here to bring in real diversity in this community.
Well, thank you, Ann. Let's go to John Wright.
So I think the council did take an important first step in setting up a committee to examine town policies. We had quite a long discussion about it at our council meeting the other day. It's possible that committee may take on a broader role, and I'm completely in favor of having a forum for getting ideas from others in the community, and particularly people of color. We don't have a lot of people of color in the community, and we need to elevate their voices so we can hear more about what some of the things we can do. I don't know that I'm in favor of the town actually giving money to businesses to come install themselves here. I think that's more of I think there's some other things we can do to promote that, but I'm totally in support of having a forum where those viewpoints can be expressed.
Now let's do to the next question, and it relates to climate change. What role do you see the town has in mitigating climate change? ... Where is it in the priorities, especially in regard to more near-term concerns like COVID, like the economic dilemma that most communities face, or even flooding? And so we're going to start off this time. Number 2 is going to be Alexis.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, but Eileen actually hasn't answered the last question. Do you want to bounce it back to her?
Eileen, you didn't have a chance. That's right. You're 5th. I'm sorry, Eileen. I thought it was John.
That's all right. Thank you.
And now you know what the next question is, though.
Yeah, I actually, if you could repeat it again, I was trying to get attention, but I'll answer this one first.
The first one is what about how do you make the town more welcoming to people of color and people of different ethnic groups?
Well, I do support our racial equity committee that, and I like that came from residents were actually the ones that brought that to the council. It wasn't just the council itself, though I will mention that Alexis had tried to raise this some time back, and there wasn't interest from the council. So it was really kind of organic that it came from residents. It's true we are 92% white here, but my observation is that we have a lot of people of color working and owning businesses here. We have ethnic restaurants, nail salons, convenience stores, gas stations, the bike shop, eyewear shop, the carpet store, the gelato store, all owned by people of color. We just don't have very many people of color living here. And it's hard to attract people to move somewhere when you don't have a critical mass of people who look like them already. So I get that that's hard. On the council, I think the biggest impact we can have is in hiring. It doesn't mean because we hire someone who's a person of color that they'll move here and stay here, but it's a first step, and hopefully if they are here in the community, they'll want to live here. But I think when we talk about equity and diversity and inclusion, we should also remember that includes gender, not just race. And remind all of us that we fought for the rights of women, and we've got 3 women running for the council here. Something we have never had on the council is a majority of women. So I think diversity and inclusion and equity also includes gender, and we ought to be talking about that too.
Thank you. Excuse me again for jumping over you, Alexis, thank you for pointing out. But Alexis, it's your turn this time. And the question relates to climate change. And the fundamental question is, where should climate change be in the priorities that you face on the council, given the fact that you face also COVID, economic problems, and flooding? And there's all sorts of things before the council. So where does the climate crisis fit in your priorities? Alexis.
Thank you. Yes, it's very high in my priorities. All these issues that you just mentioned are interrelated to an extent, and climate is sort of the issue that will end all issues if we don't address it meaningfully. For me, climate change, it's really twofold. It's mitigation and adaptation, right? Lessening the bad and then actually preparing for the consequences. I'll note that I'm the only candidate endorsed by the Sierra Club. I'm also endorsed by many members of our Sustainability Commission, and as well as our Sunrise Marin climate activists. Now, a big part of what I've been doing on council is trying to turn our climate action plan into a living document. It has clear goals and steps, but it sort of sits on a shelf. So over the past year, I've worked hard to make sure that it's actually referenced and implemented. I helped write and then adopt our climate emergency resolution, which calls for immediate substantive action. And specifically, I included that climate action plan consistency must be cited in staff reports for council consideration. I also introduced a new budgetary process to start tracking our climate spending, but there's more work to do, and that's partly why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Now we're going to go on to Anne.
On the importance across the board of climate change. She's absolutely right. It affects everything from flooding to fire to electric cars, that we will be adapting probably in the future, according to Governor Gavin Newsom. So we have to deal with it. Because of the COVID impacts, we've had to roll back some of our more enlightened policies we've adapted here in Marin with the 2019 climate plan. All of the SUPs, the single-use plastics, we're back doing that again because it's not safe to take things out during COVID, and in your own containers and all of that. So we've had a bit of a backslide, but I think that people are more focused on fixing this than they ever were. We have the Fire Safe Marin committees and the Measure C plan to help mitigate fire problems, and we have the active inspectors going around talking to people about changing their landscapes, coming up with local plants that require less water and are less flammable. So we implement it on that level. I think we should look at the downtown area in terms of flood and simply floodgates. Every merchant should have the same height floodgate that they have ready to install in case of an emergency. We might look at a citizens committee that can help if a flood comes, put those things in if the merchants aren't able to get there. And the town already has allocated $700,000 for electric car, I believe, charging stations in the future. And we are focusing on rolling toward a more sustainable environment in San Anselmo. I think this is a very active part of the town's plan thus far. And then I think the town is doing a really good job of it.
Thank you, Ann. John?
Well, I want to give credit to Alexis for being, I think, the climate change activist on the council. She's really done a great job in bringing that issue to the forefront. I'm a big supporter of our climate change action plan. We have a very active sustainability commission. Many of their former members and current members support me. And we've done a lot around. We have an electric vehicle plan. I own an EV. It's a great part of the solution. We've also been looking at green building requirements and as Alexis says, we need to put teeth in some of our requirements, and many cities around the state have been becoming a lot more rigorous about requiring changes to be made in when properties are renovated, and so I support that, and I think we're making good progress in San Anselmo.
Thank you, John. Eileen?
We can talk about realistic things the town can do. We can install electric charging stations because we know that we are moving towards electric vehicles. They're still pretty expensive, but the prices are coming down and they can go further. And we see our residents moving to them. Our goal is, I think, 3,000 electric vehicles by 2024. And if I look on my street, I think we're headed in the right direction because they're cropping up everywhere. We can buy electric vehicles for the town. So we can lead the way on the council. We can get rid of, we can move to electric leaf blowers and ban gas-powered leaf blowers and garden tools because they pollute the air. And then we can We know we have climate change, so we can do things related to fire preparedness. We can clear the brush in the hills so that if there is a fire, it won't be as bad as it could be. We have 3 flood mitigation projects that are in the works right now. So I do think we're on the right track, and I think our residents want us to be on the right track. I do consider it a high priority, and I'm pretty proud of how we're doing in this regard.
Eileen, thank you. Brian.
You know, I think we can always do more. And so in San Anselmo, I think the real strength we have is our Sustainability Commission. You know, I've been proud to endorse one, but more importantly, I'm proud to have engaged with them. And then I think what we can do in San Anselmo is use that thought leadership to take it out to the county. So 2 of the places where I've been able to do that is work with the Transportation Authority of Marin, and I've been a real active participant and a driver on the Electric Vehicle Ad Hoc Committee. You know, what can we do at the county level to leverage San Anselmo's thought leadership? And the other place where I've been incredibly active is the Marin Economic Task Force Recovery. And that really is, as we're trying to work through reopening and economic recovery, how can we sustain, how can we embed sustainability and green principles? How, as we rethink and rebuild our economy, how can we effectively bend the climate curve? And so, you know, I think our community wants that, but what they want to see is, look, you know, how can we make that work in a way that works for everyone? I mean, so many of our essential workers right now are under distress. So we have to be mindful of policies that affect them, but at the same time, you know, thinking long-term for allows all of us to survive and thrive in the face of this climate challenge.
Brian, thank you. The next question, and just so Ann knows, she will go first. The question is, do you favor closing downtown streets on the weekend and making San Anselmo Avenue one way? Ann.
Absolutely no. I do not. And I'll tell you why. The merchants are the driving force for the action downtown. We do not have waterfront dining like Tiburon. We do not have a university and a beach and boardwalk. People come downtown because they want to shop. And a lot of those people need cars. They come from all over Marin. Bicycles are so important. We need to grow our bicycle safe spaces. We need to have space for electric bikes. But turning downtown San Anselmo Avenue into a partial one-way will kill the merchant business and a lot of the restaurant business down there. Eileen and I walked up and down that street and talked to everybody about this, and they were so upset because no one is going to be able to get to their stores and pick things up. People are not going to buy a $250 dress and probably put it on the back of their bicycle, you know, and drive 5 miles home with it. It's important that we focus on what has been a sustaining force for this town, and this is where we get a lot of our revenue. I do think it's great having the streets closed at night on the weekends. It's fantastic. The merchants said, let's get string lights across there like downtown San Rafael. Let's make it, you know, a more festive destination. In the daytime, it does impact the merchants. If we turn downtown San Anselmo Avenue into a bike walking promenade, there will be nothing else there. There will be a park, there will be people on bikes, there will be, you know, a few things that you buy as you roll through, and that's it. I like having a functional town. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people moved here. And I think we need to grow our businesses down there and not shut them down. The only reason I can see anyone wanting to do this is if they have a plan in the future to make it permanent. It did not serve the residents downtown, and it did not serve the merchants. I'm totally against it.
And Politzer, thank you. John Wright.
Thanks, Dick. Yeah, so I find myself largely agreeing with Ann. I think the closing of the streets downtown in the evenings has been a good thing. I think that's, of course, in reaction to COVID and trying to help merchants and restaurants. I think the one-way street idea is problematic. I mean, this was only ever a concept. There were plenty of opportunities for public input, and it became apparent that there were just too many consequences on traffic and parking. I think it may be sometime in the distant future, something like that might make sense. But for now, I think we need to focus on, you know, nurturing the businesses that are there and certainly getting their input. I mean, we have an economic development committee, as I mentioned, that is a venue for merchants and their representatives to come to talk to the town about ideas that they have. And as I said earlier, I think the town has demonstrably done some things to help small businesses downtown with the signages and all that. So we can certainly do more, but I think we're on the right track.
John Wright, thank you. Eileen Burke.
Weekend nights in the summer, like we've been doing, but I actively was against it for it was promoted as a quick build to deal with COVID, and it absolutely wasn't necessary. Our residents are social distancing. They're wearing masks. We've got parklets, and we're like the most bike intense town you could possibly be. We do not need a dedicated bike lane through San Anselmo Avenue that would take out 24 parking spaces and direct traffic into our residential neighborhoods. It would have turned my street, Tamalpais, into a commercial thoroughfare, and our elderly residents wouldn't be able to drive downtown or park, that we would have lost so many parking spaces. I mean, we are going to be, within 14 years, our nation is going to have more people over 65 than under 18. And though bikes are great, and I'm a biker, we are not giving up our cars. We may be moving to electric cars, but we're not giving them up. This would have impacted our safe routes to school, and we would have spent about $50,000 in a complete misuse of town money. So I'm absolutely against the one way, and I'm glad that Ann and I were able to defeat it.
Elaine Burke, thank you very much. Brian Colbert.
You know, I think the one-way conversation really is not sort of encapsulating what's going on. I mean, the staff report came on Friday saying, let's not do it. So I'm not quite sure, to be honest, what Eileen and Ann are taking credit for, since the staff said, let's not do it, and then council said, let's not do it. I think the more interesting question really is, who are the stakeholders in downtown? 77% of our tax revenues come from the residents. 25 of the top 25 sales tax producers in our town, 7 are grocery stores, 13 are restaurants. So the question to me is, what can we do to embrace our restaurant culture? If you look what the closing of the streets on the evening did, we've now got 7 restaurants, and San Anselmans love their restaurants. We've crowdfunded 4. So we've got 7 restaurants that are breathing new life and energy to downtown. So me personally, I think continuing to have a conversation and saying, hey, is this something that we want to do? And engage with the community, that's the way to do it, right? Because the truth is, if we hadn't closed the streets downtown, our restaurants probably wouldn't even exist right now during COVID-19 because they wouldn't be open. So I will continue to say, look, let's have a conversation and let's see what's going on. But the thought that there was $50,000 out of town money is simply false.
Brian Colbert, thank you. Alexis Fineman, please.
Thank you. I think I'll start off by qualifying that my answer is different if we're talking about a permanent change versus a temporary sort of COVID adaptation. I was leaning more towards the let's try it side of things, given that it was temporary, because I do think that COVID has really changed the way that we circulate, the way that we transport ourselves, and the kinds of things that we need from our infrastructure and our public spaces, right? Including our streets, including our sidewalks. So I was definitely open to having that conversation and engaging, stakeholders, as Brian said. I do support having bike protections downtown. I've lived a mile from downtown San Anselmo my whole life, and I wasn't allowed to bike downtown growing up because it was dangerous, right? That was the perception. So I definitely do support having protections, stronger protections, whatever we do. The truth is, our business community is not a monolith. There's competing needs and there's competing tensions, and all the stakeholders need to be engaged at the outset so that we can figure out what the concerns are and mitigate them and arrive at a compromise for all of our business community and our residential community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. We're going to go on to the next question now. And John Wright, you're going to be the lead person to answer. And this question comes from a San Anselmo resident who asked, Governor Newsom just signed a law, AB 2967, which disallows 401k style retirement plans, making pension reform, the person says, almost impossible. Are you aware of this? And what can be done in general to lower the pension costs to the town of San Anselmo? John Wright.
Thanks, Dick. Well, pension costs are definitely a big issue in Marin towns. San Anselmo's situation is kind of in the middle. We're not as bad as some. We're worse than others. We're kind of a moderate. We've actually taken some concrete steps on the council to try to mitigate our pension liability issue. A couple of years ago, we put $500,000 out of the general fund into a side account to help pay down pension liabilities. So we're taking active steps in the town. There's only so much we can do in terms of the basic pension rules because those are set at the state level. So we can take certain financial steps locally, which we have done to try to reduce the impact of those liabilities over time. The PEPRA law that was passed several years ago at the state level, which treats new employees differently. Those hired after, I think it was 2013 or 2014, don't get as generous benefits. So eventually the situation will improve, but for now we're doing what we can. It's a very difficult issue for us to deal with at the local level.
Thank you, John. Eileen, you're next.
So it's my understanding of the new law that we can't switch current employees to a 401k style, but that doesn't mean we couldn't hire new employees that we don't contract through the current system and maybe go that route. And as I've said before, and I know you've reported on, we have unsustainable public pensions, and our pension costs are going to double in about 7 years if we do nothing. And it's going to cut out all of our other services. It's going to cut out our parks, our library, our roads, you name it, if we don't address public employee pensions. So we have to look at every tool in the toolbox. And that means increasing sales tax or property tax, cutting the number of retirement years that we give pensions, increasing employee contributions, and to the extent we can, putting a 401k first 401k style contribution benefit on the table. So as you know, Mr. Spotswood, you asked this question, or this question was asked at the IJ interviews, and I was the only candidate that said, I'm willing to look at everything because we have to deal with this issue. We have to look at our town as a whole. We can't let everything else die around us in the name of pensions, and I am willing to do that.
Thank you, Eileen. Brian, your question, the pensions is the topic.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a bit churlish to talk about cutting firefighter pensions when we're asking to risk life and limb for our property, our neighbors, and our lives. So look, I'm an entrepreneur, and I completely agree with John's analysis. You know, we've done that work. But what about the growth component? And so I've got two things. The first is, we were just talking about restaurants. So why not fully embrace what restaurants do? Yountville, which has a budget half the size, takes in the same amount of restaurants as we do, $250,000 a year. So why not embrace the restaurants and then take in as much as Yountville does? That's another $250,000 we can take towards pensions. The other is, let's look to Measure D. This is a little bit wonky, but it's important. And I want to know, and I like to know my numbers. Measure D right now takes in about $800,000 to $900,000 a year. And we've got 0.25% of a sales tax that we can have here in San Anselmo. So why don't we take it right now, use it to reduce our pension burden, the burden on our kids, the burdens on us, the burdens on our seniors before the state or the county takes it. So I think those are two growth imperatives we can do. First, embrace the restaurants.
Thank you, Brian. Alexis, I want to remind, by the way, folks out there, you can submit questions on YouTube and on Facebook. So we really encourage folks to submit brief questions, and we'll try to combine them if they duplicate. But please submit. We want to hear what you have to think. Alexis Fineman, please, you're next.
So the first thing I'll say is, if this was easy, we'd have solved it, right? We wouldn't be in this situation. And it's part of a huge conversation. But tonight, I just want to talk about three things. First, the state got into this mess because of faulty assumptions that were made over 2 decades ago. And we're dealing with the fallout now. So I ask myself, what assumptions might I be making today that are faulty and they're going to create problems for people down the road? So there's a little bit of a learning opportunity there. 2, tough decisions are going to have to be made. We have some limited ability to raise taxes and generate more revenue in other ways. We can reduce the number of employees. We can reduce services. Whatever we end up doing, it needs to be part of a large conversation that the town has with staff and with the community. And in order for that to happen, the community has to be engaged and educated. So the third thing is transparency. We can have better transparency so that we can have a more productive conversation about this. Mill Valley actually has a table on their financial statements that provides a summary of salary and benefits, so to have the pension information more accessible. And I think that we could and should do something similar. Thanks.
Ann Politzer.
I believe our town is already running pretty lean on staffing and on payroll. I was looking this morning in the IJ, there was an article about Novato having the same problem. What were they going to do? Most of their money was going into pensions. They decided to cut staffing, but what they did is they moved people into positions that were already vacant. We don't have that luxury. So I think it's very hard to have this discussion because we are going to implode in 10 years without looking at the fact that healthcare is linked to pensions. And there's nothing I don't think we can do as a town about this, but we should look into it. But if we could uncouple pensions from insurance That would save us a lot of money. That's probably not going to happen until there is universally, mandated healthcare. But maybe we can look into that as a road that we could also go down, because as the population ages, there are more demands on insurance. People aren't dying young, and if you're already vested at the pre-PEPRA level, it's a lot of money going forward. Half of our town is on post-PEPRA, so they are on smaller pension funds and benefits. And I think that we are just going to have to juggle this going forward. I think we should be looking into 401ks. I'm glad the town has these side trust accounts. When it comes to police and fire, they seem to generally be very committed to their pension funds, and they don't want to let them go. So that would be a difficult area to shift anything.
Thank you. The next question, Eileen, by the way, you should know that you're going to go first to answer this question. What's your position on renaming Sir Francis Drake Boulevard? Do you believe the question should be submitted to San Anselmo voters?
I do think it should be submitted to San Anselmo voters. And the reason for that is Sir Francis Drake Boulevard goes through so many towns and areas of the county that I don't believe we're ever going to reach consensus. I think that the most fair way is to come out with a resolution, is to submit it to voters, and not at a special election that costs us, but at the next general election. But I've thought a lot about this issue, because I do not like to tear down. I like to include other groups. And I've thought of an idea where we could highlight our Miwok culture without having to take down Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. And I got the idea by seeing all these pride sidewalks, the colored rainbow crosswalks, and then seeing the new utility box that has Miwok designs on it. And I think at every crosswalk along Sir Francis Drake, we could put a Miwok crosswalk. And you can do that with paint. It's relatively cheap. It would honor the history of people that walked these roads from village to village. And we could both highlight our Miwok history and keep our Sir Francis history. So that's my approach.
Thank you very much, Eileen. We're going to now go to Brian on the same question of Sir Francis Drake Boulevard.
Yeah, so, Dick, this is interesting. So, one, I actually, to be honest, I don't think this is really a top of mind for a lot of folks in Marin right now. I mean, I think they're concerned about their job. I think they're about, the concerns about the winter, the recovery of COVID. But I do realize it's on the mind of some folks. I have to say that I think, to be honest, when you wrote your piece on August 24th, I got a little bit of feedback from the community saying, hey, did you see where this is? So I think at this point, it's sort of inevitable that we're going to go to a vote. It's a democracy. I'm comfortable with that. At council right now, to be honest, we've been getting reports from Councilmember Burke and Alexis right now about where that process is. Given it's a multi-jurisdictional process, I really have no idea, when it's going to come forward, given that it's the county and several municipalities, but it's going to go to the ballot. And the people in Marin are going to have an opportunity to learn, educate themselves, and then see where they stand on all this.
Thank you, Brian. Alexis.
Can you hear me? Oh, yep. All right. So the first thing I'll say is, these conversations are not new. They kind of exploded this summer, but conversations like this have been going on in the community for decades, right? We have Indigenous folks, we have Native folks, we have Native Californians and Coast Miwok folks who live in our community. And this name has meant something to them and to others for a really long time. My personal view is I'm not a fan of the name. However, I think that's a little bit different from the question of, should we change it and how do we change it and what do we change it to? I'm part of the working group at the county level that's discussing this right now. And the truth is we need more information. We need to understand the logistics of what does a name change entail, what happens when it's multi-jurisdictional, and that information is forthcoming, but it's not here yet. I like the idea of adding in more recognition for the Coast Miwok. Having said that, there have definitely been calls from people in our community who are marginalized and asking to be included, and saying, we need some things to go away in order for healing to happen, in order for us to feel comfortable here. And I want to listen to those voices and elevate them. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. That would make Ann Politzer next.
Yeah, I think that people feel strongly about this. This is the one question that I immediately got when I said I was running for office over and over. What do you think about the Sir Francis Drake Boulevard name change? there are a lot of reasons for people to feel strongly. And I think that everyone should have their say. The process kind of blew up, as Alexis said, and then, there were hearings and, listening sessions. It seems to have damped down a bit, but still, I think that if it's a controversial issue in the county, it should go on the ballot, not a special election, but, just along with the next general election that comes up. I don't know, it may resolve itself by then. I doubt it. But, up until the 30s, it wasn't called Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. It was called Olema Road. So I personally am not wedded to the name. I think that we should do whatever is the consensus of the people here. The fact that it is a multi-jurisdictional problem is big, and the name change would cost a lot of money, and we really need to review that in all ways before we do anything about it. So it even includes Highway 1. So it's a little sleeping giant right now, but it's going to pop its head back up, and I think it will end up, going to a vote.
Thank you, Ann. John Wright.
So it is a difficult question. I think we're, at least at my level on the council, I'm not on the special committee that Alexis and Steve Bird are on. So at the council level, we've only had a few conversations about it. I think we have a lot more input to get from the public as time goes on. Obviously, Drake High School has been very involved in the process for their name change, and I think we can learn something from that. As to what kind of a vote it should be, I guess my feeling is that, council members are elected to make tough decisions. This may be one of them that should be made at a council level. I don't think we actually have a general election until the early part of 2022, which is kind of a long time away. So I'm anticipating the decision may be in front of the council sometime in the next 6 months or so in the other councils. And I would propose that we just deal with it at the council level here and in the other jurisdictions.
John Wright, thank you. Let's go to the next question. And Brian, you're going to start off with this one. It's an old question for San Anselmo. What are your plans to address the issue of flooding?
Yeah, sure. Well, unfortunately, I'm told my opening statement wasn't heard, but 3 years ago, I ran on the following premise, that economic vitality was tied to flood mitigation, and hence was the idea of creating a brand new park downtown. Because I think the challenge was, let's get the community involved in the flood mitigation piece so we can craft a new commons. Because I think economic vitality is actually designed for people who want experiences. So I think Reimagine Creek Park is, typifies and is actually the tangible reality of flood mitigation. We've got a brand new space. It's the second piece of the necklace of open space begun by Imagination Park. People come down there all the time, and it's a commons. So it's a place where people come to either walking or biking, multimodal, green, and they say, what should we do now? Should we go eat? Should we eat and then go to a salon? Should we eat and then go shop? It's the kind of thing that is in fact timeless, right? And then it will encourage businesses and landlords to make the necessary investments because flooding will be reduced.
Thank you, Brian. Alexis, you're next. Flooding.
Yes, thank you. So I'll start by saying that the new plaza downtown is actually slated for removal next summer because that obstruction impacts flooding in town, and it was actually condemned for removal in 1943 for that reason, and it was never removed. So I'm supportive of a regional kind of whole watershed approach, which is sort of what we have with our flood district. We're in flood zone 9, and a lot of the flood issues that come before town are actually sort of not the town's issues; they're now the flood district's issues. I think that removing the building downtown is a win-win project because it mitigates flood risk, and it will actually help restore the creek. So there's environmental benefits, there's the flood benefit, and of course there's the kind of livability benefit. There's also projects downstream in Ross, removing the concrete channelization down behind the post office that would definitely impact us upstream positively. Last fall, I voted to adopt an ordinance that requires commercial properties to have basically floodgate protocols, and that boosts our FEMA rating, which actually lowers flood insurance. So there's also some adaptation pieces that we can do and should do as a town. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. And Politzer's next.
Yeah, it is a countywide problem, but it does impact us specifically here. And I know that a lot of our neighbors are, a little upset that we've gotten a lot of the attention from the county on flood control because we've had a lot of flooding. The current Creek Plaza, that platform that was underneath La Part, there is some concern that if it comes out that the creek side there might erode and fall in and speed the flow of water upstream. So I think that might require a second look, before we actually pull that thing out, even though it's slated to be gone. It only overflowed once, and that was, back in 1943 at that spot. But I think we need to look at other ways we can mitigate flood. There is a potential for another containment basin. We started the one out at Sunnyside, out in the growing grounds by White's Hill, to hold runoff water from that watershed. We could put one in at Upper Brookside on the lower field where there's that little dog leg by the creek. That's a possibility to hold some water. We need to look at the Morningside area of San Anselmo, which has had terrible problems with flooding because the culverts and bridges are too small. It's similar to what's going on down at Bolinas and Ross, which is slated to be repaired with monies coming this year. And when the Corps of Engineers spec'd those pipes, they were looking at free-flowing water, not sediment-carrying water, so none of them are big enough. So Morningside was number 4 on the list. They lost out to a project in Ross. And we also, as Alexis said, we need to standardize floodgates, and we might be able to look at homeowners insurance and see if there is a way that if their lot is not totally in the water, just the yard, not the house, we might get a break.
Thank you, Ann. John Wright, flooding.
So I've been on the town's flood committee ever since I've been in the council, which is now almost 7 years, and I've been on the Flood Zone 9 advisory board for 3 years. So I'm very familiar with the current Ross Valley flood management program, which I support. We're finally beginning this year seeing actual projects completed between the growing grounds and the removal of the building. And as was pointed out, there's a second step to the removal of the building. I support the current plan. So I think the role of the council at this point is to be supportive of what's been worked out over the last almost 10 years now. It's a very complicated topic. I think and we're just one piece of a larger puzzle. So I think our best bet at this point is to, ask questions certainly, but be supportive of what has been studied extensively. There's not a lot more we can do at the town level. We can do some things in terms of education. Floodgates are a great idea. I agree with Alexis about that. So there's some things we can do at a very local level, but basically supporting the existing program is our best route.
Thank you, John. Eileen Burke, you are the cleanup person on this question.
Thank you. So I've actually lived through 3 floods here. I think I'm maybe the only person running who's lived here that long. There are 3 projects going on right now. The Sunnyside Growing Grounds at the base of White Hill, they've broke ground on a detention basin there. That will help us some. Ross and San Anselmo are combining to do some flood mitigation at Bolinas and San Anselmo Avenue. That's going to help also. And then we did tear down the Part Restaurant, and there's flood mitigation. We're preparing for flood mitigation there, where it's now just a temporary plaza. As far as the creek there, as far as Creek Park there, we only have $150,000 of what is supposed to be a privately funded program for that park. So we don't yet have either a design or money, though we will proceed with the flood portion of that, whether we ever get the money or the design for that park. We do need to fix Lower Morningside Drive where the culverts are too small. I live about 100 yards from Ground Zero on Tamalpais Avenue, and I do have to buy flood insurance. So I know about this issue. Other things we can do are floodgates on businesses. We do require elevation if you're in the flood zone and you do major construction. We can clean the creek, which we used to do in the past and haven't done in a while. And the other issue coming though is rising sea level. Will we be back where we were in 50 years? Thank you,
Eileen. We have one question. It's going to not take everybody a minute to answer. It's from a resident. It's about Measure M, which you all know is it's not a San Anselmo issue per se, but you folks are influential. It's the tax to the Tamalpais Union High School District's proposal to continue its current parcel tax. Very quickly, for or against? Alexis.
Thank you. I have endorsed this year's Measure M.
Thank you. We're not going to have everybody explain why it's a great idea. They just want to know where you stand. Ann.
4.
Okay. John Wright.
Yes, I do endorse it.
Okay. Eileen.
School. I'm for it.
Brian.
I'm the only person who's a public signatory for that measure.
There you go, 5. Thank you very much. You answered that resident's question. They appreciate it. Let's go on to something which is going to take the full minute, I'm sure, for each of you. And that is, what are your opinions and thoughts about density and affordable housing and auxiliary dwelling units, which has also been talked about as a means to address affordable housing? And what are the specific applications you see for San Anselmo? Let's start off this with Ann Politzer.
Hi, I think we ADUs are a good idea. It solves a myriad of problems. We've gotten special, there's been dispensations with setbacks for ADUs. There has been, reduced permitting rates for ADUs. We have an affordable housing problem here. Creates problems with diversity and creates problems for elderly people who want to stay in San Anselmo. It also creates problems for young families who can't afford to get a start, and teachers. So by having ADUs and having them, the way we've got them set up where you can build them freestanding, you can have them part of your house, that is a good thing. And we should continue to support that. Also, some people, in this community are not, rolling in dough, and they need, sometimes, to have extra income to pay their mortgage. So ADUs are helpful for affordable housing. They don't, spread out of our already tiny footprint. We are impacted in terms of building. We can't afford space here to build big apartment complexes for seniors or for affordable housing. I think we should do all we can to support them.
Thank you very much, Ann. John Wright. You know the question. You faced affordable housing issues before. What do you think? Where should it be located?
Sure. Thanks, Dick. Well, I find myself again agreeing with Ann on this. I do support ADUs. It's been a good solution, kind of a win-win. Affordable housing is a big challenge for our town because there are very few places to build. People have talked about the Sunny Hills property behind Red Hill as a potential place that would be interesting, but Sunny Hills is a nonprofit, and if somebody did approach them, I'm sure we'd be supportive. We just don't have a lot of sites. The town has been supportive, I think, at the council level and the staff level about doing more affordable housing, but again, we're not all that attractive a place to build because we don't have a lot of sites. And there's a few things we can do, including increasing some density to make it more attractive. But as a practical matter, it's somewhat of a market-driven issue, and we're just not that attractive because of the lack of locations and the cost. And it's just too many. There's so many challenges, even though we may be philosophically supportive, which I certainly am.
Thank you, John. Eileen Burke.
And we are in a narrow valley, and we're basically built out. And it's expensive here. So if we build a lot more, we're going to have a lot more traffic, which we don't want, and has to do with sustainability as well. I am for ADUs. In fact, I have one attached to my own house. And I think they're effective ways they're often low income or at least moderate income units. I'm also for senior housing. Also on my street is Tam House, which is communal independent living for seniors. And I absolutely support that. It tends to be low income people. They're great neighbors. They're also low impact. They tend not to have kids and not drive much. We're an aging population, so I'm very supportive of senior housing. We're also developing senior housing right now over at 1 Lincoln Place. The other thing to think about, though, is that in San Rafael, they just cut the developers' requirement of affordable units from 20% to 10% because they couldn't attract developers. We just don't even have lots or even the ability to attract developers, and San Rafael's cheaper than we are. So we do have some subsidized rentals, but I'd promote ADUs and senior housing primarily to take care of our residents.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Brian Colbert.
I've been supportive of ADUs at the council level. I'm personally supportive of ADUs. My wife and I, made the choice not to supersize our house and instead kept the ADU, and in fact rent to a long-time Marin person who's, sort of looking to move out of her parents for the first time. I think the interesting thing about Tam House is that it's a great thing, but the state doesn't give us credit for it. So I've been working on my partnerships that I've developed at the state level to sort of encourage this housing and see that San Anselmo gets credit for it, right? If we're going to do the right thing, it would be nice that we again can serve as a model for the rest of the communities in our state. Housing will continue to be a challenge, and I think at the council level, we're really trying to balance, what will be those state mandates? How can we create more housing while at the same time, focusing on what makes San Anselmo unique and special in the face of these economic and demographic pressures that we face?
you very, very much. Alexis Fineman.
So I'm a teacher, and affordable housing is near and dear to my heart. And this is another question where, if it were easy, it would be solved. I think the first piece of this is really, how do we make sure that new housing is affordable? I'm supportive of ADUs, but we need to define what affordable means in San Anselmo. Secondly, because of recent state level laws that sort of have fast-tracked ADUs at the local level, we need to make sure that ADUs that are being built are actually being used as housing and not just as an extra room or a gym or whatever it is in homes. So we have to find creative ways to incentivize and promote that these are actually being used for housing. And then third, I think we do need inclusionary zoning. I know San Rafael is looking at scaling theirs back, but I think that we lose out by not having it because our development opportunities are so limited. We want to make sure that affordability comes in there. The second piece is, how do we make sure that their housing stays affordable? Many of our older and longtime residents are like house rich, cash poor. So when we talk about affordability, we need to make sure that they can stay here. So we need to be really sensitive in our fees and our tax structures to make sure that it's not putting a burden on those homeowners. And thirdly, we need to work with local experts. There's a lot of nonprofits and community members who really understand the complexity. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. The next question, and by the way, you guys are very efficient. We're doing a few more questions than we thought we'd have time for, so that's great. And don't forget, YouTube and Facebook is the place to ask your questions. This is going to start with John Wright, by the way. John, you'll lead off the answer. It deals with retail cannabis. What are your thoughts about the location, opening of a retail cannabis shop somewhere in San Anselmo?
Thanks, Dick. Well, I'm on record as being a strong opponent of retail cannabis sales in town. I have no problem with people adult use or deliveries into town. My concern is I think families have a lot of challenges with drug use with youth. We have an addict in our own family, and I think there's just a lot of challenges to normalizing cannabis use. So I've been a strong opponent. I'm concerned that several of our candidates have taken campaign contributions from a couple of people that have financial ties with cannabis developers, and I'm a firm opponent.
Eileen, Burke, please.
Feeling that our residents don't want retail cannabis, and so I think if that's ever going to change, it's going to take our residents and a petition, or at least the initiative process, to change it. On the other hand, we already allow delivery into San Anselmo, and I read in the IJ recently that San Rafael, in the delivery services they allow, got $140,000 in tax revenue for just the quarter. So if we're already allowing other towns to deliver it here, why not allow a delivery business that's not a storefront to exist here so that we in the town can gain those tax revenues? So I don't see any logical argument against that. So I would allow a delivery service here, but I wouldn't allow retail until the residents tell me that's what they want.
Ryan Colbert.
Yeah, hi, Dick. So, again, like John Wright, I was on council. I went on record as being against it. I thought that the economics of cannabis in this town didn't make sense. It was clearly going to be a windfall for the local purveyors who had partnered with outside cannabis businesses, and it seemed pretty clear they were going to try and corporatize it. So there was no money in for it. I also thought the dynamics were poorly suited to our community. That is, our community had to keep coming to a meeting and say, no, we don't want it, while a few business owners and outside money kept sort of saying, no, well, keep saying no, keep saying no. So I'm on record, I'm against it. I thought it was poor form that one of our former council members tried to push it through, and then a couple of months later tried to invest in a cannabis business. I'm running on my integrity. I'm not trying to benefit from it. I'm listening to the community. The answer is no.
Colbert, thank you. Alexis Fineman.
In 2017, before I joined council, the council passed a stopgap measure to ban cannabis, but it had an explicit wink and a nod loophole for potential businesses to have a path to opening. And so last fall, applications were coming down the road, whether or not we wanted them to be because of this loophole. And I did vote to re-examine our policy. The reason I did that is not because I necessarily want cannabis in town, but it's because I think it's a complex issue. By that, I mean, most residents, I think, would agree that having a retail storefront across from the library is very, very different from having a medical delivery business on the Miracle Mile. And I believe as a council, our job is to kind of facilitate the conversations to figure out how the community responds to difference and complexity. Having said that, the policy was changed. I didn't support the way that it was changed, but I'm glad the loophole is closed. I don't mind the outcome personally, but I'm not really interested in reopening the conversation as a council. We just have other things to focus on right now. I do think we will need to have the conversation eventually because it's not going away. And I just want to make sure that we are addressing it with the careful diligence and the kind of eye towards nuance that's required for a really big topic.
Thanks, Alexis. And Politzer, the question is cannabis.
Dick, you might remember that when the IJ asked us this question, I was the only one who didn't, that you said cannabis in San Anselmo, yes or no? And I said, I can't answer that, yes or no. Everyone else said no, because I don't feel like it's up to me as a council member. I feel like that is a question for the public. Personally, I'm fine with there being no dispensary here. I'm the mom who takes lighters away from kids on the hills when I run into them, and I give them to their mother, But I feel like this is a call for the people. Right now, we have an ordinance because people were vocal about not having it. If in the future people are vocal about coming up with a petition and putting it on the ballot, we can relook at it again. It's legal in California. And I totally get what John's saying. And I think he makes a very good point about, a dispensary downtown normalizes marijuana use. Do we want that to be a normalized thing that our children see? However, it's not up to me as an individual council member. It is up to the public. So whatever the public wants to pursue, I feel like we should pursue as a council. Right now, we have an ordinance. There's no dispensary. I think that's fine. I agree with Eileen that delivery would be a very good idea if people want it, because it is legal and it does seem to be a revenue source that would not impact the town in the same way that we're concerned about.
Thanks, Ann. Let's go to the next question. And Eileen, you are going to be the leadoff batter on the next question. How will you make the hub more pedestrian, biker friendly? The questioner says, I love to bike walk downtown, but traversing the hub is a large deterrent. We're not talking about San Anselmo Avenue, the hub. Let's start off with Eileen.
So I think it's probably unrealistic to think that we're going to make the hub more bike and pedestrian friendly. I mean, it does have crosswalks, and you do occasionally see bikes go through there. However, we have side streets. We have Greenfield Avenue that bikes can take that aren't as crowded. We have a whole bike lane and bike route through downtown Tamalpais over to Cedar. So I think it's more about educating the populace to stay away from the busiest, I believe it's the busiest or second busiest intersection in all of Marin County. So why would we want to introduce bikes there also? I think you're just asking for danger. Let's educate bicyclists and give them an alternate route is what I say. In terms of pedestrian friendly, I've been out there with my sign lately almost every morning, and pedestrians are relatively, I think they're safe. The crosswalks work, the lights are timed. I haven't seen any danger to pedestrians in any way. It's not the most attractive location, but I don't see a problem with that. But with bikes, educating them on.
Thanks, Eileen. Brian Colbert.
Question. Let's go back to Reimagine Creek Park, which is actually fully funded by the county. There's no private funds needed whatsoever. One of the interesting designs we got out of that was turning the hub into a roundabout. And I have to say, I think it's one of the things that the community would love to see explored. So I think turning that into a roundabout would be really exciting. I'm a big believer in increasing bike and pedestrian safety. And one of the things I did last summer was I went to the Netherlands on a mobility study, and what they had was a floating bicycle roundabout. So one of the things I've been advocating for as a member of the Transportation Authority of Marin is, as we're thinking about how people are going to move around, not next week, but in the next 40 years, and people are on electric bikes, why not investigate turning the hub into a roundabout, and why not turn the hub into a floating roundabout? Let's make that a tourist attraction in addition to Creek Park. That's the kind of, to me, sort of forward thinking that embeds San Anselmo values, sustainability, looking to the future while making lives better for those of us who live here right now. That's an opportunity we should totally be exploring.
Brian Colbert, thank you. Alexis Fineman, the hub.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'll start by saying that cycling is my main mode of transportation. I typically, well, I used to commute via bike, not so much now. And I have an electric bicycle as well as a regular bicycle. So I am really interested in strengthening bike infrastructure. I think a floating roundabout would be great, but there's other steps that can be taken to sort of more fully integrate bikes. And there are some problem areas going through the hub. And I actually know someone, I have a friend in town who was hit last summer, basically commuting back home from work. Thankfully, she's okay. We do need to engage experts because traffic issues are really complicated, and there's a lot of engineering, there's a lot of municipal kind of higher level code. And what I would like to do is see options that sort of prioritize, what would it look like if this were, if there was balance between our different modes of transportation at the hub. There's different options for that. But I think it really is something where we need to be having a long conversation with traffic engineers who actually are presenting us with the options before we can really start to dig in. Thank you.
Thanks, Alexis. Amy Politzer.
I'm sort of in shock about this idea of a floating roundabout at the hub. I'm like, I can't think of anything more dangerous. I'm sorry. I've been down there with Eileen, jumping around with my sign in the morning, and it is difficult for bicyclists. That there is so much traffic there; it's going so fast. People are cutting those lights right and left. I know that part of Brian's vision for Creek Park involves opening up those trees where the bus stop is where Creek Park, bumps up to the hub. And probably, I'm guessing, I don't know if you want to put an electric bike stand there. I think we have to really realize that cars are here for a while. We haven't moved to where we have efficient public transportation through that area. I think creating I grew up down Carmel. There's currently a roundabout at the Pebble Beach entrance where Highway 1 comes into, a confluence with Monterey, Carmel, Pacific Grove, Pebble Beach. It's a mess. I really think that we are so impacted car-wise. Sir Francis Drake can't handle the flow that it has. We can't jump ahead to an idyllic version of an electric bicycle future yet. So I hope that is not an impending project. I like the idea of people being creative. I like people looking for resilient solutions, but that kind of scares me.
And Politzer, thank you. John Wright.
Thanks, Dick. So yeah, I think, the reality is we're going to have some pretty significant challenges with traffic in San Anselmo in the next couple of years because a couple of the bridges are slated for reconstruction just to the side of the hub. So I think we're going to need to have some process in place similar to what Alexis suggests, where we have a number of options to look at. I certainly think an ambitious vision such as Brian suggests should be one of the options we look at. There's going to be a lot of, one worries that any change you make from a infrastructure perspective, just the very construction is going to create an Armageddon of traffic just to get the work done. But I think we need to be very open-minded and visionary as much as we can be. And we'll have to deal with it because of some of the traffic problems that are going to be upon us within the next 2 or 3 years anyway.
Thank you. Thank you all. You've answered questions. We have a few more questions that people have sent in. We've tried to combine the most we could, but you guys have been great. I'm going to send a note tomorrow morning to Chris Wallace that San Anselmo knows how to keep the rules and follow the rules. So congratulations to all of you. We're not going to give you 2 minutes each with one exception. We're going to give you 2 minutes each to tell voters in San Anselmo basically why they should vote for you. The one exception is when we started, no fault to him, Brian Colbert's transmission was garbled and there was a buzzing sound. It was very difficult to hear. So I'm sure everybody will understand. Brian is the last. Here's the order, by the way, to go. Alexis, Ann, John, Eileen, and Brian. All the first 4 have 2 minutes. Brian, we're going to give you an extra minute, so you'll have 3 minutes to be the final wrap-up speaker tonight, telling us about your platform and why San Anselmo voters should pick you. Let's start off with Alexis Fineman. Cico.
So I'll actually start by telling you how I would make the decision. Anytime that there's incumbents running, you as a citizen actually have a lot of information available to you at your fingertips. And I would encourage anyone who's considering voting for an incumbent to watch council meetings, and not just for the kind of hot button issues, but just the regular run-of-the-mill boring stuff. And look at the kinds of questions that we're asking. Look at the kinds of comments we're making. Do you like how we're interfacing with the public? Do you like how we're engaging with staff? there's a lot of data out there, and I would really encourage people to do their diligence and to, be kind of actively seeking that information if you're considering voting for an incumbent. As far as why you should vote for me, I'm thoughtful, I'm thorough, I'm well-researched, I'm diligent and dedicated. I am the youngest council member in Marin County. I also have experience being on the council. I have experience being in the audience of council meetings, and I know what it's like, and I want to make our council a more inclusive environment for everyone who shows up to participate in town. I really value digging into complexity and trying to understand nuance, and I'm not really one to rush through something. So you can count on me not to just kind of push through and accept whatever comes before me, but to really try and dig in and give it a second look. I frequently introduce tiny tweaks and amendments whenever we're considering adopting a policy or an ordinance that close what I see as a potential loophole that could come back to bite us in 10 or 20 or 30 years. Because as I've stated, I hope to be around to see. I hope to be in San Anselmo at that point. I'm still participating in our community. And then the final piece is, I'm really running to represent my generation and the concerns that we have about our future. I'm not someone who wants to kick the can down the road, but I want to do what we can here and now to really safeguard this place that we all love and the world that we all inhabit. So thank you so much for your consideration. And you can learn more on my website, alexisforsananselmo.org. You can also email me at alexisn, as in Nancy, Fineman@gmail.com. Thank you again, everyone.
Alexis Fineman, thank you. And Politzer.
Thank you all for being here tonight and for listening to this debate. I think it's incredible how much engagement there is in this community and how informed the voters are in San Anselmo. Eileen and I have been going door to door in a COVIDly interesting way. We've been safe, masked, backed, temperature checked, and everybody wants to talk to us. We've had, one person who didn't because she was concerned that we were going door to door during the COVID thing, but everyone else is wanting to engage and discuss. And I think that it is important to honor the intelligence, the creativity, and the engagement of the folks in our town. One thing I will say, though, they really do not feel, a lot of them, that they are being heard at town hall. And what I want to do is I want to be a mouthpiece for a lot of those people on the street. Everybody on this council is intelligent. Everyone has good ideas. Everyone is committed to this town. What I think we need to do is bring transparency back to the council proceedings in terms of these projects that are happening, whether they're funded proposals or just, even town fixes for streets and stuff. We need to know what's going on because they impact the voters. And that is something that I will do. I will work to restore Millennium Park, Millennium Playground, and Memorial Park, starting with our own town funds. We are already doing that, working on the field. I will support businesses downtown, try and grow minority businesses. I will fire harden the neighborhoods, and I will get instruction out there for people to fire safe committees so they can take care of their own. I will bring back the volunteer network. We had a volunteer coordinator at one point. It used to be the schools had all of these events like Oktoberfest, and people marched out of there like a bunch of Marines ready to work. There are new families moving into this community all the time. They want to help. They want to plug in. That's why they moved here, because they have that community sense. So I think we can engage them in working for the town, for fixing that Millennium Playground. And I am a grassroots custodian for San Anselmo. I walk around, I talk to everybody. I'm everybody's dog's best friend. So I would love it if you contacted me. I'm at electann.com and Politzer@gmail. Let me know what you think. I'll get back to you, and please vote for me on November 3rd.
And Politzer, thank you. John Wright.
Thanks, Dick. So I find that actually there aren't that many differences between the candidates in terms of what we think about different issues. So to me, the election comes down to experience and track record. My thought is that during these times in particular, the town needs experienced leaders with a track record of results. I've served San Anselmo for 24 years as a school trustee and council member, 2 terms as mayor. I was chair of RVCS, which was the predecessor to the Yes Foundation, and chair of the Drake Fund, which I helped set up. I know how to work collaboratively with multiple stakeholders in the community to actually get things done, not just talk about doing them. The evidence of this in San Anselmo includes the 15-year effort to build Red Hill Community Park, which I led, and the significant improvement in the town's road conditions over the last several years as a result of Measure D, which I also led in 2013. So these are tangible accomplishments. As a member of the Central Marin Police Council, the Flood Committee, and my neighborhood Firewise community, I'll continue to advocate for improved public safety measures in the face of the current challenges. My past and current work on the town's Finance Committee has given me deep knowledge of the town's budget. This is critical as we face the financial challenges of the pandemic. As Dick Spotswood himself noted in a recent column regarding the opening up of the downtown for Creekside Commons, the current town council manages to work pretty well together. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, I believe the town is on the right track. We have a great staff, a well-organized community of volunteers already working on our many committees and task forces. As a council member for 7 years, I've helped in these successes. I respectfully ask for your vote to elect me for another 4 years so I can continue the work. Please visit my website, johnwrightforsananselmo.com. If you want to sign or make a contribution, you can do that through the website. So thank you for listening tonight.
John Wright, thank you. Next, Eileen Burke, please.
Sure. So I'm definitely not a top-down type of politician with big, crazy ideas. I'm smart, I'm reasonable, and I know San Anselmo. I'll go out and talk to residents and figure out what they want. And I think something unique is I have perspective. I think you gain a unique perspective when you grow up somewhere because you see it through a child's eyes. When you become adult and raise your own kids, you see it in a different way. And as you watch your parents in a town get older. So I think I have perspective on things like how we balance cars, bikes, and walking. My family walked. I've been biking in this town since I was 6 years old. But now that I see my dad is 87 and drives everywhere because he can't walk, I know we're not getting rid of cars. We are moving towards electric, but let's be reasonable. We're not going to turn the hub into an electric bicycle floating roundabout. I mean, that's not what people moved here for. Another example is fields. When my kids were playing baseball and soccer, I thought this would be great if Memorial was a turf field. But now that I've gotten a little older, I realized that would only appeal to kids 14 and under or so when they played sports, not to all of us as a commons. I probably feel the same way about taxes. When I was younger, I wanted my town to provide way more services and things for me. But now as I see my parents get older and me get older, I think about being house rich and cash poor. And taxes, I want to pause a little about. So I joined Age Friendly San Anselmo because I like their focus. Everything about your town should consider strollers to walkers. I'm not a special interest candidate. My special interest is this town and all its residents, and I'll balance all of that. Plus, I'm loyal. I am not a career politician. I'm not going somewhere else. This isn't a stepping stone to something else. What I care about is right here. And I also have the guts to act in the town's best interest, not for some special interest group that wants a bike lane or that wants something specific. I'll act for all of us. I hope that I'll get your vote, and you can go onto my website at electeileenburke.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian Colbert. And thanks to the technological wonders of the world, Brian's initial comments were not heard as clear. So, Brian, we would like to extend you an extra minute. So you have 3 minutes total to give your thoughts on anything you wish. But tell the voters of San Anselmo why they think a vote for Brian Colbert is merited.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to revisit my opening statement and then just add a little bit at the end. So as you know by now, I'm Brian. I live in San Anselmo with my wife, my 10-year-old daughter that attends Wade Thomas. I'm really proud of Reimagine Creek Park because what it does is it's bringing new economic vitality for all the reasons that I've talked about before. And I think most importantly, it embodies the values that are present in San Anselmo. And they're not special interests. They're your right? They're a group of men and women who came to execute and create this vision. The park creates a compelling family and community experience. It's actually a tangible commitment to equity, right? Anybody can come to that park. We don't care who you are, what you look like, or how much you make. Come and enjoy the open space. Yet another thing we value here in San Anselmo. And finally, it's meaningful progress to bending the climate curve. We encourage people to walk. I think one thing that very few people on this call have talked about is, what have you done from a policy level to help our community address the challenges of COVID-19? I mean, my daughter and I gave 100 masks to the mass tree downtown, and that's important. But what I've done since April, when I wrote about the cash crisis facing our businesses, I've been active at 2 county-level committees, Marin Recovers and Marin Economic Task Force, focused on the health and the economic challenges. And what I've been doing is two things. One, I'm making sure that San Anselmo has a voice. And two, I've been partnering with our other communities in Marin to figure out how we can address these challenges and move forward. Finally, I would encourage everyone to go to Colbert for Council. And what you'll see are my endorsements. And what you'll see are they are your friends and neighbors. They are the volunteers who make up our commissions, our boards. These people are the true heart and soul. I'm not going to end this call by telling you what I did, but I'm happy to share what we did as a community. Town council makes the policy, but it's you who actually do the work. You who the Arts Commission who sets up the boxes downtown. You who works on the financial committees to make sure that we're staying in budget. I participate, but the leadership truly comes from the community. Finally, I'm really glad about the relationships that I built, from U.S. Congressman Jared Huffman to Senator McGuire to Assemblyman Veen to Katie Rice. Because if there's one thing we've learned during COVID is we're all in this together. I mean, sure, we're all checking on our neighbors and making sure that they have groceries. But in times like this, San Anselmo, a small community, a special community of 14,000, we need to partner with our friends across the county at the state level to see how we can learn and what kind of help we can get. In closing, all I'll say is this. It has been a truly humbling experience to serve council for this community. As I tell everyone, I'm easy to find. You might not like what I say, but I say the same thing to everyone because ultimately I have to live in this community. And it's my integrity, I believe, that will allow me to sit here and ask for your vote again. Thank you very much.
Brian, thank you. Normally in a moment like this at the end of a debate, the crowd starts applauding and thanking and coming out and wanting to line up and shake your hands, candidates. We're on Zoom. We can't do that. But I can say that for them, it's just a pleasure to see 5 classic candidates, all of whom are qualified. And if there's one difficulty we face today in small town America is finding qualified people to run for office so that we have more than just choosing to reelect an incumbent. We have a real debate. Tonight, you showed what small towns can do. I just want to congratulate the candidates. These folks are essentially volunteers, people. This is not a job. They all have other jobs. This is what they're doing to give back. And so what can we say except please vote. Vote. I talked to the registrar today. They're going to count votes earlier this year. By state law, they'll start on the 6th. So the earlier you vote, the easier it's going to be so that election night is all, at least in this state, is run professionally. I want to thank the San Anselmo Chamber of Commerce for inviting me again to host this debate. Not every community has an active enough Chamber of Commerce to do that. Benedetto, Cico, and the whole crowd of volunteers, they are volunteers. And they're doing this because they love San Anselmo. So I want to say thank them. And lastly, I just want to say, don't forget every Wednesday and Sundays, I'm in your Marin Independent Journal. Please read us or at marinij.com if you're online. So Benedetto, candidates, San Anselmo, what a pleasure. Thank you for having me as part of this program. Benedetto?
Hello, Pat.
Yeah, great. Okay, I'm going to jump on. Hi, this is Pat Townsley with the San Anselmo Chamber of Commerce. Dick, thank you so much for being a great moderator one more time. I just want to let everybody know that the candidates will receive a transcript of all the questions that were asked tonight on both the Facebook and the YouTube account, and they'll receive those. Also on our chamber website, we have all of the websites listed of each of the 5 candidates from tonight, so you can easily contact them. And if you want to ask questions, please engage with them. If you feel like contributing funds to any of the candidates, you can do that through their websites and help their campaigns along if you feel strongly enough about their positions and what they're going for. All of our candidates, again, are listed on the Chamber of Commerce website at destinationsananselmo.com. A couple quick things about the Chamber. As you probably know, we just did a fundraiser. It was a quick 3-week campaign. We received $13,000 from the town of San Anselmo. So the town is so active and proactive, and the town council is integral in helping these things move along. So we thank the town and the town council for making that happen. We also received $13,000 from the county of Marin. So far, we've been able to give $40,000 to struggling businesses here in San Anselmo to help them keep in business in the face of COVID. We've seen so many businesses struggle in these challenging times. We've seen many pivot and be successful along the way here. We see crippling restrictions on places like the salons and these close proximity businesses that are having a real struggle. So we're hoping a few more of those will apply for the few remaining grants that we do have from the Save San Anselmo Fund. You can find more about that at destinationsananselmo.com. And then we have a big marketing campaign, which is going to further embody the new branding of San Anselmo, which probably got lost because of COVID. The new median, the new wayfinding signs, the beautiful logo of Sugarfoot, and all the new signage that we have here in town really kind of got washed away because we're so busy focusing on trying to survive here. So we're going to help rebrand that and make San Anselmo a real destination, a commerce shop area. Remember, please shop locally, dine locally, support your local merchants. Everybody's struggling. We've seen new businesses come in. We just saw Curate Studio with a ribbon cutting by the San Anselmo Chamber of Commerce here on San Anselmo Avenue. We see new business owners taking over. Bon Thai has a new ownership coming in. And I understand that Nevin Hawk is changing their name. They're still the same owners. Chris is still the owner, but changing to move along with their lifestyle. It's going to be called Longway. So we're seeing businesses pivot and change along the way. And it's a big challenge for everything and everybody here in town. So we do have a monthly, twice a month, a networking meeting on Wednesday mornings. You can find more about that at sananselmoconnect.com, also at Destination San Anselmo. Once again, our thank you to all the 5 candidates. We wish you all the best. We thank our first responders out there for being right there in the field. We thank Trevor Henley at Inspire to Desire Studios at inspiredesirestudios.com, the back-of-house production for tonight. We did a fantastic job, although we apologize for Brian's challenges, and we think that might have been localized on his thing there. But if you have more questions for any of the candidates tonight, please go to destinationsananselmo.com. You will find links to every single one of the candidates there. Engage. This is obviously going to be one of the most important elections in our history, and it will be the most impacted. There's so many issues going on, and it's really important that we act locally here first. So please engage with the candidates. Our best wishes to everybody. Destination San Anselmo, the production by San Anselmo Chamber of Commerce. Thank you from everybody here at Creekside tonight, and thank you, Dick Spotswood, once again. Thank you very much. We will be posting this on our YouTube channel at Destination San Anselmo. Thank you, and God bless.
God bless you, and God bless everybody here. We got 5 great candidates. We got great people in San Anselmo, and ballots are going out this weekend. If you do nothing else in the next few days, cast those ballots for one of these 5 people, and perhaps a few other offices you might find on that same ballot. For everybody here in producing this show and the San Anselmo Chamber of Commerce, I want to say, be safe. Good night. Take care.
Good night.
Thank you.